Cars 2. Oh man, what a game. I am specifically talking about Cars 2 for the PSP, the slot racing PSP cousin to the home console version of the game. So welcome back to the Worst Racing Games, the series where you guys comment different terrible racing games for me to play and rank in a tier list. When I originally created this series, this game was at the forefront of my mind, and I'm very glad someone did suggest this to play. Now, I did play this in my Cars PSP video last year, but in the spirit of second chances and fairness, this time I've spent a lot more time with just this game so that I can give you a much fairer opinion. So, this version of the game was developed by Virtual Toys and was actually published by Sony themselves, releasing from mid to late 2011. Now, the home console counterpart to this game was a classic arcade 3D racer. This, on the other hand, is a slot racer, meaning you are locked between 2 to 4 lanes in any race. But let's come back to that later. So this game follows closely alongside the home console version, where you are in the Chrome facility doing various testing missions, which range from races to time trials to combat missions. So let's jump right into it, let's talk about the gameplay experience. So to accelerate or brake, you use either one of the bumper buttons on the PSP console, and to change between the different lanes you just use the analog nub. On top of this, you can press triangle to jump, X to boost once you've built up enough, and circle to use whatever weapon or power up you have. So first off, in terms of game modes, let's talk about the time trial mode. So in this mode, there are multiple gates set throughout the level, and you just have to get between these gates before the time runs out, and as you pass through the gate, of course, you get more time added to the limit. Now, the best way to do this is to go through and make sure you pick up as much boost as you possibly can, and speed your way through the level whilst making sure to not hit any obstacles. But this is where my biggest complaint with Cars 2 comes into play, and that is the stupid design of some of the tracks that just don't allow you to react to obstacles coming up. Because of both the track layout and the way that the camera pans around as you move, sometimes you have literally less than about half a second to react to something coming up, sometimes even less time. Now, as you start to replay some of these levels, that gets a little bit better because you have the memory of doing it previously. But for casual players, this is just stupid. Anyway, outside of this glaring issue, the time trial mode is completely fine. It's just a standard time trial. We also have 3 different kinds of races in this game. 2 of those kinds are quite similar to each other, so let's get those 2 out of the way first. So we have the standard race mode, that is just 4 cars racing around a track with boost. There is boost you can pick up, and that's that. The AI in standard races isn't particularly clever, and is also quite rubber bandy, but that does work both ways, so if you make an error and crash into an obstacle you couldn't see, the AI slows down significantly so you can catch up. So the fact that the game has screwed you over doesn't feel quite as bad. Now, as well as regular race, there is battle race, which is identical to the regular race in nearly every single way, except now there are power-ups as well as boosts to pick up. The power-ups that you pick up are pretty much identical to the home console version. You've got your machine gun, rockets, some little thing that locks onto another car, so on and so forth. It's all pretty much the same, except it's harder to avoid now because you've only got 4 lanes to switch between instead of many different angles. Battle race is fun and all, but I found the AI in this mode especially go from anywhere from being the stupidest person on planet Earth to the goddamn Terminator, and no matter which lane or part of the track that I was on, I was just going to get blown up over and over. In games like Mario Kart, when a projectile is heading towards you, it gives you a little warning to give you some chance to try and block it or get out of the way. In Cars 2, that doesn't happen, because you can't see that far behind you due to the camera angles. You can just have about 1 frame of a missile enter the screen, and that's it, you've gone kaboom. The other race mode is Eliminator. It's the same as a standard race, except at the end of each lap the person in last place gets eliminated. Now, Eliminator also has the power-ups as well, so this makes for a very chaotic time. Now, if we subtract my biggest problems with the game, the camera angles and the hidden obstacles, then these race modes can actually be quite entertaining. Now, if you made it this far into the video, for old time's sake, please comment "ka-chow" down below. On top of the time trial and 3 racing modes, you've also got the attack mode. In the home console version of Cars 2, there's these battle arenas with specific maps where you face off against a load of grunts and eventually Professor Z himself in a helicopter. Now obviously you can't really make a purpose-built arena for battling when you're a slot racing game because you're locked to certain areas. So instead you just keep driving around whatever map you're playing on, destroying enemies with the power-ups you pick up, and each time you destroy an enemy, your time goes up. So the more you destroy, the longer you play for, the higher the score you get. As you progress, some higher level grunts that may fire back spawn in, and eventually Professor Z himself joins the fray. It's a fine enough game mode, but it does again highlight the issue with the AIs turning into complete Terminators. Now across the board, this isn't a bad lineup of game modes. As I've said, it just would be so much better if your gameplay wasn't hindered by poor level design and poor camera work. So let's talk about the handling of the cars themselves. Now, I'm going to be real with you, the handling of the cars all pretty much feel identical because you've only got a tiny bit of movement for all of them. The most lanes you can move between at any point is 4, and the cars drift for you on the corners, so all you can really do is tap the analog stick left or right a couple of times, and either hold down the acceleration or very occasionally tap on the brake if you need to move out the way of an obstacle. The speed of each car feels fairly similar, and you get a good sense of speed when you're boosting, which is exactly what any game should have. The power-ups all feel quite powerful to use, although a word to the wise, don't use them on the corners because obviously the bullets won't turn round the bend like the cars will. One of the bigger problems I have with the controls is that occasionally when you press the jump button, it just doesn't work. If you've just changed lane and you're too fast to press the button, it is just not respondent at all. And in a game where it really tests your reaction times, it needs to be better than that. So now let's focus on the design aspects of Cars 2. Now in terms of graphics, this is an okay looking game. The cars models themselves aren't fantastic. Some of the levels look really nice, bright and colourful, which suits them very well, such as Italy and London, but quite a lot of the looks of this game do fall quite flat. And I think it's worse because the original Cars game had a PSP version, and that came out several years beforehand, and I would say looked a lot better, especially when considering the hardware that it's on. Now, the track designs themselves are fine in terms of layout. The way that the camera pans and zooms in and out as you're moving around can actually be quite nauseating at times because sometimes it's so quick you just can't react to what's going on around you. But as I've said, the biggest gripe with the level designs are the random objects scattered around to dodge. Now, I know they obviously have to put them there to put a challenge in, but there should be a good countermeasure to this so you can at least react in time without it just appearing on the screen and hitting into you. Some of the larger objects that are coming up do have exclamation marks in their lanes beforehand, but anything smaller you do not get any warning at all. It's always the small stuff that catches you out. Much like its console counterpart, you've got a good range of characters to play as in this game. You've got your classics, of course, like Lightning, Mater. You've got the newer Cars 2 characters such as Finn McMissile, and you get the World Grand Prix racers such as Francesco, Jeff Gorvette, and Nigel Gearsley.
Yeah, I can do things you thought were impossible.
Yeah, thanks Jeff. Cheers for that. One thing I do like about Cars 2 is the menu design. It fits the Chrome spy mission theme very well. I mean, it is basically just pulled from the actual home console version of the game, but it still looks nice here on PSP. Speaking of things I like from the home console version of the game, the soundtrack to the Cars 2 game goes unironically very hard, and that's still the case here on the PSP. I've said it before and I'll say it again, Italy Race is one of the best racing game soundtracks ever made. It is just so cool. So yes, this does have some of the charm of other Cars games, but whilst you're playing, you just can't help but feel like this game feels somewhat cheap and very lazy. The previous two Cars games for PSP were both 3D racers, so why make this change to what is, and let's face it, the inferior style of racing game? This game just feels like there wasn't enough time allotted to Virtual Toys to make it, and instead of just doing what everyone else was doing with Cars 2, they just decided to do something quicker and easier. If there was a good reason to make it a slot racing game, like a really cool twist on the genre, or at least a way that makes it feel like a smooth and fluid game, then fair enough, but the problem is there's no cool twist, it doesn't feel smooth or fluid, and it's just quite janky. which just is a shame because the other Cars 2 games, other than maybe the DS version, are all pretty solid racers. Now the question is, what was the actual response to Cars 2 for the PSP? As per VG charts, the game would go on to sell just over 100,000 copies, which is by far the lowest selling version of the game. The 360 and PS3 versions both sold approximately 500,000 each, with the Wii version just selling below 1 million and the DS version scraping over 1 million. And interestingly, the PSP version is the only game to not have an official Metacritic score because there weren't enough reviews to count it in the first place. So if we take the average score of the 3 reviews that there are, it would give you a 61.6% out of 100. Which I guess seems fair. Personally, I'd score it a little bit lower, nearer to 50, but it's fair enough. Now there's only one question that remains, and that is, where will Cars 2 PSP fit into the worst racing games ranking? And the answer to that is the middle tier, and that is rubbish. It's not the worst game ever made, it's not so bad that it's actually good, it's just a very disappointing version of Cars 2. It has some sparingly charming moments, but outside of that, it is just rubbish. Anyway, that takes us to the end of this episode of Worst Racing Games. Where would you rank Cars 2 in this list, and do you have any other suggestions of games you'd like to see? I'll be putting all of your suggestions into a random selector, so there's no bias in me picking any games. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe and tap that bell for notifications of my future uploads. And as always, I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.